Welcome to the Biz Gone Social podcast. We help entrepreneurs navigate how to get known, get customers, and get the edge over their competition. Here is your host, Lorraine Duncan.
Hi, everyone. Here we are on the Biz Gone Social podcast, and I am actually so glad to be here. My promise to you, as always, is I want to give you a little bit of verbal caffeine that's going to energize your business and help you stay social. Because after all, don't you want to be the business that everyone's talking about? I know I do. I am so stoked today to have Jeff Kikel with me. Welcome.
Hey, how you doing today?
So tell my audience a little bit about what you do and who you serve.
Well, so Lorraine, I've kind of a unique business. I serve really two types of folks. I've been in the financial services industry for 30 years. And I really, after 30 years of doing this, or really it was about 20 years of doing this, I started to realize that the dribble and crap that we were putting out as an industry was not working for people. Whether you were a business person or whether you were an individual working for a company, you just, all the hey, just save 10% of your income for 40 years, and then you get to wear black socks and sandals and downsize your house, have one car, and take one cruise per year. And I didn't want that, and I don't think my clients wanted that. So I started to look at different ways of doing the same thing, but from a different approach. I stopped using the R word, retirement, a long time ago, and started using the term Freedom Day. And the whole idea behind Freedom Day was you actually have some control over it. Retirement has this somewhat, it's this time-based approach that says, well, when I hit 67, I get to retire and I get to have fun. And I don't think a lot of people like that. I know the younger generation sure doesn't. I started to look at it and say, well, from a Freedom Day perspective, I have control over that because I'm not focused on growing a big pile of money. I'm focused on generating an income, a cash flow. And if I focus on cash flow, then I have control over it.
Yeah, I love that. It's somebody once said, look, they can't wait to retire because they're going to hang out on the beach all day and all week, for the rest of their life. And I'm like thinking to myself, God, that's got to be pretty boring.
Yeah.
And I'm a beach person, but I mean, I can't imagine. And a lot of people, you kind of have to plan your retirement, not financially, but like, what are you going to do? Where are you going to be living? It's like, I don't know. I look at my business. I don't know if I'm ever going to retire. I can do my business from online, from anywhere, from any country. I could still travel. And, we both know living in the States here, you live in the States, correct?
Yep.
So we know that Social Security isn't going to, it may buy us, it's not going to buy us a month's worth of groceries.
Yeah. It was never designed to be, a lot of people, it's their only income that they have coming in. It was never designed to be. It was only designed to be about a third of your total income. So in most cases, it supplements for the vast majority of people about 45% of their monthly needs. So it's actually doing more than what it was ever designed to do. And I think the challenge is people need to stop. Our industry has built this belief of, oh, you've got to amass this, $2 million a year or $2 million to be able to generate 4% growth out of that investment. And, that's what you're going to live on for the rest of your life. Well, that works well and good for the mutual fund companies and the insurers, because that assures that they've got a big pile of money to make off. But it's not, it's not the reality for most people. And most people need to be finding. Yeah.
I remember sitting down with my financial planner and, I remember when I first started out, like, oh, you're going to have this by this time. And when you go, I think what I needed at that time when we get that I had to retire at $1.9 million or whatever, and then I lived comfortably. Well, that number has changed significantly. And I look at it and like, oh, that's not happening, but I'm still going to I'm going to slow down for sure and do the things that I want to do. But, let's talk about that, because a lot of people, that's their word. It's retirement, so what would you say are some alternatives to retirement?
Well, I think you've got to start really focusing on how you're going to generate the income. If you call it retirement, that's fine. How are you going to generate the income? And just saying, well, it's a big pile of money and I'm going to generate income. No, that's not it. How are you going to generate income? So, what can you do to control that? Well, I can do things like I did. When I was built into this world and I was trained in this world of, well, you just keep amassing assets. So you just keep working really hard, put a whole bunch of money away, and then you'll have this big pile of assets. And that changed for me pretty much about 12 years ago. I just decided, you know what, I don't want to do that. And I came to the realization that I was coming up way short, because I had things happen in my life prior to that. And even though I was in the financial industry, at least I was in the financial industry enough to know, oh crap, this is not going to work. And I need to figure out something else. And, that was when I launched my first business. I quit my job. I launched my first business, which was I actually launched two at the same time because I wanted to stay in the financial services industry, but I also launched a co-working space. And that was my first real foray into building a business, and building really two at the same time. Would not recommend that. And I wouldn't recommend quitting your job before you do it. But it was, for me, that was it. And I kind of was done with the job that I was at the time. And this was the opportunity to say, you know what, I'm going to do this. So, over the years, I built 6 different businesses. I invested in real estate. I invested my portfolio. I learned different methods of investing my portfolio that kept getting me away from the industry perspective, which is, well, if you just put your money into a whole bunch of index funds, you'll average about, call it 8.5%, 9%, and that'll be perfect. Well, I mean, and anything more than 10% is risky. And what I found was there wasn't risky stuff out there. I mean, most of the stuff I do today averages anywhere from 15% on up, and I take way less risk on the stuff that I do,
and it's like we get, anybody you talk to will always tell you, oh, you should do this. You should definitely do this. And like I've worked with definitely a couple, like one financial planner, maybe a couple insurance companies, and anything that they promised actually really isn't true at all. Yeah. And I remember, this is, you may be too young to remember this, but in 1985, my grandfather passed away. And but what he did, he had a pension from the New York Fire Department. He, they both had their social securities. And actually, after he passed away, my grandmother still got his pension from the fire department. And so he had, what he did, he thought he was being smart. He invested in, at that time they were called CDs, but they were actually earning 14%, which was way over what everybody else was offering. So he figured, after he passed away, he'd be leaving my grandmother pretty good and she could live on that 14%. Yeah. Well,
until they started maturing.
Those CDs went boom, like down significantly. I mean, she still, she had the Social Security and the pension. And so she still lived wonderfully fine in her retirement and got to do what she wanted to do, which always amazes me because they were always both so hardworking. It made me happy, but so she didn't really have to have a side gig or anything, but a lot of people do. And, and should be, I mean, really, what are you going to do? Sit around in your house all day and watch soap operas? And, that gets old. So, like, what are some good opportunities that people could do?
So what I typically do is, I created what I call the Freedom Day method. And basically the Freedom Day method is it's an 8-step series of things to do to get yourself to your Freedom Day. And it starts, the first and most important thing is sitting down and being honest with yourself and saying, okay, I have this much money coming in every month. I have this much money going out. Hopefully the left-hand side is higher than the right-hand side. So I have some money left over that I can apply towards investments or whatever. And I want to understand what my debt is and everything else. So we get real first. And then from there, we determine what we call a minimum required income, MRI. So what is it that I absolutely have to run my life on a monthly basis? Okay. Once I know that, Then I get to take a fun step, because that's not a fun step. That's a scary step and people don't like it and it's not fun. Well, the next step is, all right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to build a bucket list, because this is the problem that I see with a lot of the different, you've got the FIRE movement, you've got all these different movements around retiring early and all this, but most of them where they miss out is they don't do a really good job of saying, hey, here's some rewards along the way. We want you to just, a lot of these movements are like, hey, we just want you to, spend only 50% of what you make and then save that 50% so you can retire early. Well, the problem is once I get there, then I really don't have much of a life as it is. So what we do, we build a bucket list, and then we're going to choose out of that bucket list 3 to 4 things that we can do in the next 6 months and give ourselves a dollar amount to work with. So we know, okay, this is going to cost me X dollars. Then we're going to go out and we're going to create a little side hustle. We're not going to quit our jobs. We're not going to try and do something too complicated. We're going to create a little side hustle. That can be as simple as, you're in the marketing business. I'm sure you hire contractors on an occasion. Well, if you've got a special skill, maybe I'm a digital marketer. Maybe I'm somebody that understands how to use email marketing, all that type of stuff. Well, those are skills that can be sold, and we can go out and do that. So let's say my goal is, all right, I need to make $400 to do this one thing I want to do. Okay, well then go on Upwork, go on something like that and do that, so that you can start to retrain your brain a little bit, rethink how you're thinking, going out of that paycheck mindset of I give time for, a paycheck every week to, what, I want to achieve a goal, and I want to, I'm going to go do something to be able to pay for that goal.
Yeah, I love that.
So now once I've done that and I start to prove to myself that I can do it, now I need to start looking at ways to develop passive income, because that's active income. If I'm giving my time to somebody for a project and then I'm getting paid at the end, that's great, but it's not going to work over time. I'm still going to be basically I'll own a job instead of work a job. So I want to start developing passive income. So what can I do for passive income? Well, I could start a little side business. I could invest in the stock market. One of the things that I personally do in my own accounts, and this was something that, I've been in the business for almost 30 years, and I hadn't heard of this. I'd heard the commercials for Preston James and his money press method, just happened to buy a couple different books that talked about the same concepts. And it's genius, because it's just basically something that I can do once a week on Fridays, and I don't think about it the rest of the week. And it generates a massive amount of income coming in off of my investment accounts, much better than I've ever done in any other things that I've ever done. So that's an option. I can buy real estate. Some people want to be a landlord. I'm not. I've done that, and I've built a real estate portfolio. I'm actually deconverting my portfolio at this point from being a landlord to becoming the bank. What I've learned more and more in my life is, if you had asked me when I was 18 years old what I wanted to be when I grew up, I would say a bank now, because I like the concept of a bank. I take in money, and then I turn around and loan out money at a much higher rate. So now I do a lot of mortgage investing. So I invest in existing mortgages. I create, and originate somewhat similar to mortgages. It's what's called a contract for deed. So those are things now that start to generate an income stream for me. And it's basically passive income. Once I get it set up, I don't really have to do anything besides cash checks on a monthly basis.
Yeah, it sounds very simple.
Yeah.
And it's funny, we all find our way. I'm just thinking about those people who are, stuck in their dead end jobs, and and they really don't even have any they don't even have plans. They don't have a 401k and all that. So what are some advices? What's some advice for them to reach their free?
Once again, and I call those folks cubicle warriors, those people that are sitting in a cubicle every day, dying just a little bit every day, going to work. I mean, you have 166 hours a week to do something. Start to investigate ways that you can generate. So once again, little side business, whatever, figure out what you enjoy, what you geek out on a little bit, and see if there's a way to make money. In most cases, there's a way to make money with virtually anything, whether it's a hobby, whether it's an interest of yours, whether you're just good at something. I mean, I'll give you a great example. When I was first getting my businesses started, once again, I had quit my job. Bad idea. It's better to keep the job that you hate and get this thing started up on the side. But in the very beginning, I mean, I was trying to move clients over. I didn't have a huge client base at the time, so it wasn't really making any money, and I still had bills. I had 100 X amount job, and I was still living the life of having 100X job and, not having the money coming in anymore. So, one of the things that I was really good at, not that something I really enjoy doing, but it was something I was good at, was writing business plans that helped get financing. So what did I do? I went on to Upwork and I put myself out there as someone that could do business plans, and I would crack them off. I mean, a lot of people charge $3, $4, $5 grand to do a business plan. I was doing them for $1,000, and I could do 5 to 6 of those a month. Well, that was 5 to 6 grand. That basically covered our expenses for the month. And that allowed me, that time, it wasn't really time consuming. It allowed me that time to be able to go and, build my other businesses up on the side, to the point where, okay, we finally reached a point where now we're ready to go. We were bringing in enough money to be able to live without me having to do those little side hustles.
Love that. I love that. This is the part of the show where we get a little bit real. What do you love most about being in business for yourself?
What do I love? I love the fact that I basically get to do what I want when I want. And it wasn't always that way. I mean, it took me, actually, the pandemic was the best thing that ever happened, because it forced me to slow down. I mean, I was working like 80, 90-hour weeks. I was literally working 7 days a week from 6 a.m. until 10 o'clock every day, doing all this stuff. And I came to the realization in the pandemic, well, I don't really need to be doing all this, because people weren't really doing anything at the time. I stopped jumping around town to different appointments all over town, which, that's a ginormous waste of time. And I got to the point where I basically only meet clients on Zoom at this point, not because I'm afraid of COVID, but it's more efficient for me. And if you don't like it, you're probably not going to be a good client for me at that point. And I get to work with people all over the country now. So, I think those things I've learned as I've gone on, and I've sold a couple businesses in the last couple years, so I don't really worry about money as much. I've kind of adjusted my, like I said, I've adjusted what I'm doing. So the financial aspect of why I was so busy all the time was trying to make all this money. I just started to realign what I was doing and how I was doing it, so that now I get to enjoy myself, And I mean, today it was, hey, I was at the office in the morning, and then I've got podcasts this afternoon to do, both yours and then mine. And I get to do that, and I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to sit here and think about, what's going on. And if I, what I've done is started to really build businesses that don't really require me to be involved. They run without me being there.
Yeah. Now we both know, there's a lot of people that know us think it's pretty cool that we own our own business. Yep. Some of them are our friends, some of them are family members, some of them are like, when you tell somebody you own your own business, they go, wow. But we both know that there's actually some hard work involved, and sometimes there's a struggle. What would you say is your biggest struggle in owning your own business in today's world?
In today's world? Well, and I mean, so I think my biggest struggle was coming from my Generation X brain, with my baby boomer parents that said, you just got to work hard. And if you just work hard, you're going to make it. Well, what I've learned is I want to work smart. I want to focus my time on what it generates revenue for my business. Where do I need to be involved in the business, and where can I pull myself out of And that's the big mistake I used to make, is I was like the cog of everything. Everything came through me. And even though if I actually technically had somebody doing the work, it all kind of came through me to begin with. So I was always that spot that stuck the business. And, I ran out of time. I mean, honestly, I just seriously ran out of time, and I couldn't grow my businesses anymore. So for me today, that's the thing I always work against, is my natural want to be involved. I've got to be involved in the middle of it all and everything. And I've got to be able to step back. And I force myself to now and say, okay, I have an employee that can do that. I give them the assignment. They know what their job is. I'm not going to be in the middle of it. I mean, certainly if you have a question, reach out to me. But other than that, I expect it done. And here's the time that I need it done by. And it's allowed me to kind of be in my genius zone and be, being focused on, okay, what are the other things I can be doing? And I will say that's been the cool thing, is I've been in this kind of weird genius zone for about the last year and a half now, since I sold one of my businesses. And it's awesome because it focuses me, and it says, okay, if I'm going to do this, what can I do immediately from the very beginning that doesn't make me be involved in it a lot? And if it is something that's going to make me be involved a lot, I just don't do it. And I get rid of those businesses.
I love that. I love what you had to say. So many things is like, you mentioned a phrase called you said genius zone, but being in the zone of genius is actually genius, because the bottom line is maybe we're proficient at some things, and that we can do them. But the question you need to be asking yourself is, should we be doing them?
Yep.
And believe me, it's like, I don't consider myself to be a control freak, but the hardest part was when I hired my first person and letting things go that I had always did. And I see you laughing and smiling on the other side there, because we both know it's true, because it's like, this is our baby, but at some point you do have to let it go, because there'll be more important things that we should be doing, like generating the money that's coming into our businesses, like being the person who is actually maybe closing the sales, whatever that is. So it's totally brilliant. There's a lot of people that are listening to the show today that, some people are startups, some people are thinking of, maybe owning their own business one day. And some people are seasoned business owners. What is one piece of universal advice that you could give them that would help them move forward and encourage them?
Well, I think, more and more you have to look at, okay, you've got to understand your worth in this world. So, I mean, you kind of talked about that, when you're saying, hey, maybe you shouldn't be the one doing it. Well, you need to understand what your value is and what your worth is. And, if you tell yourself, well, I want to make six figures, I want to make $100,000 a year. Well, then back that down to the amount of hours that you're going to spend working. Let's assume at the beginning it's going to be 40 hours. I will tell you today, I generate 5 times that amount, and I work probably about 30 hours a week at this point. I've learned how to transition myself from that. So start looking at, if you're that person that I was in my business, and people think, oh, you're a business owner, you've got all this freedom and everything's great. Well, you can create the most beautiful prison that you've ever created. And I did. I went from working for somebody else, the old joke about being an entrepreneur, what's the definition of an entrepreneur? It's somebody that's willing to work 80 hours a week for themselves to avoid working 40 for somebody else. Going from that to, okay, now I love this stuff and I'm interested in it, and I'm interested in all these different things, but I'm not really generating much revenue from those, and I'm kind of bouncing all over the place. Well, what I've learned today, and I think this is the most important thing, if you're somebody that's in business, let's say you're in a brick and mortar, I own a brick and mortar business, but I'm always looking at ways that my brick and mortar can generate other revenue sources. So what I would start doing is brainstorming, if you're a business owner, on what other revenue sources can you have? I just a simple example of this, and this is kind of a brick and mortar thing, but my co-working spaces, I mean, we're at the mercy of the economy. I do anticipate a recession coming. So I started thinking, well, what would happen if, all of a sudden 20% of my renters decide they don't want to do it anymore? Well, we decided to get into the testing center business. So I took a couple offices, partnered up with Pearson VUE, and now we do testing for real estate people, insurance people, all the different, like Microsoft and all that type of stuff. I basically doubled my revenue on those spaces by doing that, and there's zero acquisition cost for the people coming in that do it's awesome. So
and I saw that model being done. Before the pandemic, which is true. Yeah. I had a space that I would go to. I rented an office.
Okay.
And I didn't have to rent for the whole year. There was no lease involved other than 3 days a week. I had office space, and it was my way. I wanted to meet clients at an office instead of Starbucks. I was just so tired of the Starbucks scene.
No, and it just, it makes you look cheap, or it makes you look unprofessional if you're meeting them there. Now, if you're meeting them there just kind of as a friendly thing, that's fine.
Yeah.
But if you're meeting them there, if you're going to talk business and you're not willing to pony up a little bit for some type of a professional environment to be in, that tells me you're not serious about doing your job.
Yeah, no, it's true. But anyways, one day I was leaving, it was about 5:00, and all these people were walking in with textbooks and stuff. This was pre-pandemic.
Yeah.
So, I figured that there must have been some kind of, now it's like it's all coming back to me. Wow.
Yeah, now it's training. Yeah, it's some kind of training stuff. And, once again, we looked at that model too, but I was like, okay, once again, that means Jeff has to do a lot of work, and I don't want to do more work, and I probably could hire somebody to do that, but it wasn't a model that I wanted to go down. But the testing center side was easy. I'm like, they do all the work to get the people there. All we do is just set them, we take their information, set them down, get them logged in, and we monitor them, and that's it. And I already had employees.
And you let them in, and that's about it.
Yeah, and I already had employees that were sitting there half the time, playing solitaire on their computers, because it's pretty easy job most days. So now it's like, okay, well, you guys actually have to work for a living a little bit now. Maybe once or twice an hour, that's about it. But look at those things as a business owner. Now, if you're that cubicle warrior sitting there, start to think about, well, what could I do? What skills do I have? What am I good at that I kind of enjoy doing? And then go to someplace like Upwork or Fiverr. Now, I would probably say Upwork.com, because it's a little bit higher caliber, I think. People are willing to pay a little bit more. So if you're good at, let's say, building PowerPoints, well, I'm not. So I hire people to do that kind of stuff, because it will take me 8 times the amount of time that somebody who's really good at it will make my stuff look like a genius, and I don't have to mess with it. So I just give them the rough, whatever it is, and then they make it all pretty for me. Well, you can make 70, 80, 90, $100, whatever. And for somebody that's good at it, it's probably only going to take them about, maybe an hour at the most. Well, are you making $100 an hour today? If not, hey, go do that.
Makes total sense. Well, I want to thank you for being such a great guest. And is there if somebody connected with you today and wants to learn more about your Freedom Guide and maybe need your help with their financial future, how would they get in touch with you?
Well, easiest way, go to www.freedomdaymethod, METHOD.com. And on that website, there is it's what's called the Freedom Day Blueprint that I give away for free. And it basically walks you through the 8 steps of the Freedom Day method. That'll help you get started in the process. Certainly, if you want some help, there's contact information there. You can get a hold of me through that. But that's your first step, is really getting your head wrapped around this stuff and having a process to get yourself there. My goal for everybody I work with is to get them there in 10 years or less. So wherever they're at today, if they're 20 years old today, if they're 60 years old today, we want to get there in 10 years or less.
That's awesome. Well, again, thank you. And to everyone out there, this is the Biz Gone Social Podcast. Be sure to subscribe and listen to our podcast weekly. And also, I believe Jeff has a podcast. What kind of podcast is your podcast?
Freedom Nation podcast. So we really talk all things Freedom Day. I also interview a lot of people who have gotten their Freedom Day. They're people, and not necessarily all financial that, hey, they're all goofing around on the beach, but they're people that went from being in the corporate world to launching their own whatever it is. And most of them are enjoying themselves and having the greatest time ever. And they make money doing it, which is fantastic.
I love that. So be sure to check his podcast out too. And till next week, I'll see you soon. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Biz Gone Social podcast. Find us on Instagram at BizGoneSocial for extra tips. Check back weekly for new episodes. Until next time, stay social.